Good evening, this is Jack from Charting the Markets, and this is the Bigger Picture webinar for the evening of Sunday, the 19th of April. My disclaimer, I do this for educational purposes only. I'm here to share my technical analysis with you. I hope you can take some of what I'm doing and learn from it, transfer it to your own charts. I'm not here to shoot trading signals. Right, we saw big new highs on Friday, and an awful lot of news that the Iran war was ending, and all sorts of concessions have been made. And give me a second, and I'm going to show you some selections of what's been coming through over the weekend. Right, this one's from Friday, and this is from an Iranian source saying that the announcement of the opening of the Strait of Hormuz has been made under very specific conditions, blah, 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 but basically that it would be over the Iranian route, and basically that they would be paying the Iranian toll. Considering all these conditions together, passage through the strait will be limited, subject to toll payments and managed by Iran. So obviously that was one of the Iranian demands, that they would keep control of the Strait of Hormuz, and that was suggesting they were still going to have the control of the Strait of Hormuz. This is from one of the main commentators on Twitter, very respected. And this is again on Friday. I'm concerned that in this round, Iran came out with the upper hand, demonstrating not only its ability to threaten the Strait of Hormuz, but also its willingness to keep it closed, blah, blah, blah. But basically talking about it being controlled ongoing terms by Iran. And here is another one. Very, very much all about Iran holding the Strait of Hormuz. Then I saw this. This was on, I think this was yesterday morning, from a friend of mine. So this is Iranian Sepa Navy. This is yesterday morning, calling on Channel 16. This was broadcast to everyone in the Persian Gulf. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. We will open it by the order of our leader, Imam Khomeini, not by the tweets of some idiot. I can't imagine who they're referring to. If you want to pass through the strait, you must ask permission from Iranian Sepa Navy. All nation vessels that have a connection with our enemies will be targeted if they try to pass the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this is confusing. So, I mean, Trump was basically saying that we were a day or two away from a deal. It did appear that he'd basically conceded also Iran's demands. And honestly, I thought that was probably, I actually said in a post a couple of weeks ago that that would be the most intelligent thing to do here. And so I was thinking, actually, he was basically giving up against the Iranians and giving them everything they wanted, but painting it as a victory for the home audience, which, to be honest, seemed a very sensible thing to do. But obviously, we've seen a lot of indications over the weekend that might not be the case. The Iranians closed the Strait of Hormuz because the US blockade was still on, which obviously Trump was again talking about on Friday, and then the US actually went and I think shot the engine out of Iranian ship trying to leave. So far, well, it doesn't appear that the talks are going very well. There's talks about the talks actually don't appear to have started yet, with the US team going without advance this time, so going out to negotiate it tomorrow night. And if you are confused about what's happening in the Strait, well, you're not alone. I've no idea. But what I would say is, when I was chatting to that friend of mine, and I said, well, obviously we could go higher, but obviously this has all been about a deal is close in the Strait of Hormuz, and if there isn't a deal, then the reaction will likely be harsh. Oil will go up, equities will go down, and actually, in that light, and one thing I was talking about weeks ago was after the initial move, I'd be looking for retests of the high to set up some double tops, and then I was thinking we'd go down further after that. We may be in that process here. If the war is going to escalate from here, and there isn't a peace deal, which I would strongly recommend that everyone hope for, because the consequences are potentially absolutely dire if this becomes an extended war, and if both sides escalate, because the economic impact on the world of very high oil prices over a longish period could be very bad for growth, very bad for the world economy, bad for the US, bad for everyone else. So in the event that that is the case, then actually we just set up a load of double tops, and we're about to see what might look to the casual, I like something close to a crash, although, the next move down would probably only be about 20-25% subject to what the news would be. If the war is off, well, I mean, to be honest, I was thinking the upside on equities was likely to be limited for the rest of this year because the economic outlook is not great, and so on. So I wouldn't be looking for a huge amount more upside in any case. But the fact is, if the war isn't over and we are going to see escalation, then things could get an awful lot worse. And what we're seeing here may be a series of double tops. So I'll go through that. But basically, I'm planning to do a post tomorrow morning before the open. It's going to be called Schrodinger's Strait. Although that's not entirely accurate. Obviously, we can all see what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. The difficulty is working out what, if anything, all of it means. So the contradictory statements from everyone are hard to keep track of, frankly. And it's hard to know whether the US is actually giving Iran what it wants, or whether it's just basically trying to create a world where Iran will give in to what it wants, which honestly doesn't seem that likely. I think they'd have had a better chance with the old leadership that they were all assassinated in the early days of the war, because the new leadership looks rather more, is younger, harder, and frankly more hardline. So we will see, but obviously this is the real key for next week. The weekend news was pretty dubious. Obviously someone did well on this. 20 minutes before, there's been a pattern of basically big trades being put on 20 minutes before big announcements from the administration. Friday was no exception. I think there was a $750 million trade put on oil futures. 20 minutes before the announcement from Trump that everything was great and the strait was open, and I think that trade, I'm not sure. Well, I'm only getting it from the press, but I understand that trade banked $700 million plus in gains by the end of the day. So we know someone's doing well, but the question is, apart from insider trading from people close to the administration, what's the situation for everyone else? Well, that rather depends on what's really happening in Iran. And honestly, I think if you want proper news on Iran, you might as well go and watch the Iranian Lego videos, because at the very least they're funny. And they're probably more likely to contain grains of truth than anything we're seeing from the administration. All right, so that's where we are on the Iran war. Aim to have a post out before the open tomorrow. If not, it'll be fairly soon after. And if you're confused by all this, well, you're not alone. All right. Yes. We had a sell signal. It failed. We had some divergence. That failed. And we're now seeing a retracement here. How far will that get? I don't know. At the time of writing, at the time of speaking, we're down currently 58. And honestly, given the news over the weekend, I'm a bit surprised it's not more, because there's another 10,000 troops have apparently been sent to the Gulf. And there is talk of the war resuming, and Trump's threatening to take out all the power plants, and who knows, attack a whole load of civilian targets, and bomb Iran back to the Stone Age. So we'll see. All right, NDX, the 60-minute sell signal actually survived this last move up last week, which was very little short of amazing. All of these bottoming patterns that I pointed out here, this IHS made target, NQ, the IHS made target, RTY, the double bottom made target, YM, the double bottom made target too, and Nikkei, obviously that double bottom target also made target. We lost most of the sell signals. The NQ1 survived and might be starting to play out now. Certainly the news over the weekend wasn't encouraging, so I'm thinking we may well lose more ground by tomorrow morning. Looking at YM, lost the sell signal there, hadn't built up anymore. Watching this with interest. In terms of, I'll talk more about it on the RTH charts, but I have been looking for signs of patterns from the lows. Not seeing anything particularly definitive so far. Looking at DAX, we've seen a nice move up here. We never really had a bottoming pattern here, but I'm wondering about a possible challenge of the highs if we start getting good news again on the Iran war. Otherwise, to be honest, this is likely to have a big economic impact on everyone, including very much everyone in the Far East and Europe and very much America, because for all Trump talks about, oh, we don't use the tradable moves and obviously we export. I mean, the fact is, much of the oil that is refined in America is drilled in America isn't refined in America, and actually a lot of the oil that's refined in America is imported. So they're part of a world market, and actually, apart from a lot of oil billionaires and some stock markets, then benefiting from high oil prices because the companies drilling the oil benefit from it. Everyone else is going to lose. So US consumer, the US economy, and everyone else in the world. So I'm hoping some sort of a deal can be made. We'll see whether it can. All right, let's have a look at the bigger picture charts. Okay, looking at, yes, no current divergence, but obviously we're reaching nosebleed levels on the RSI 5. In terms of the daily chart, I don't think we got any new negative divergence. If we didn't already have an RSI 14 sell signal fixed here, we would have another one brewing on the monthly chart on SPX, but I'm mainly looking at the RSI 5, and we don't have any divergence there. In terms of the weekly chart, the RSI 14 sell signal had already reached the possible near miss target. We do have, after this retest, a potential level top here, and if the war escalates, then there'll be absolutely no reason to think that won't break down. And that breakdown, if we saw a sustained break below 63.50, we'd then be looking at a target and potentially about the 55 to 5700 area, or maybe a little below. I was talking about the possibility we might retrace the whole of this rising wedge, and I think that would be on the table. So it would be a disaster. And we could see the markets basically crashing for much of the rest of the year. In terms of the hourly charts, a little bit of negative divergence on the RSI 5, although pretty much need to take out a ruler to check it. Nothing on the RSI 14. Obviously, we had the sell signals fail on fix and fail on both of those. On the 15-minute chart, we had an RSI 14 sell signal fix on Thursday. Almost lost it on Friday, but not quite. That might play out tomorrow. In terms of trend lines here, I'm not really getting it much at the moment. So my feeling is that it's not finished, but I mean, at the moment we are at the mercy of the news, so we'll see. All right, looking at NDX. NDX. We've got pretty much the same on the monthly RSI. In terms of the weekly, obviously we've gone a bit higher here. This would make a pretty nice looking double top. And obviously, if we're going to see escalation in the war, and again, we're at nosebleed levels here. This is the biggest level we've hit, obviously, since late 24 in terms of the RSI. We've seen normally when we get up to 90, 91, it fails. We've actually managed to get up to about 94. 95. That is a very unusual state of affairs. So we'll see how that goes. But one thing I would note is this. I don't actually refer to it an awful lot, but one thing to mention here is, of course, here against the 45 DMA. Friday's high was at 5.84% above. That's certainly an area where a level at which we would be looking for a move up. A reversal. It's normally when we see highs above the 45 DMA, it is smaller than that. All right, looking at the hourly chart on Qs, bit of negative divergence here. On 15-minute, we had an RSI 14, which survived Friday as well. Again, not much to report in respect of short-term trend lines. Am I seeing obvious wedges breaking down here? No. The last ones I had, which were decent, we broke up from, and with some pause. All right, Dow. Dow, we haven't retested the high yet. We've got high enough that I'm wondering about it. We do have a possible alternate. I've got a potential read of this as a head and shoulders, but to be honest, it went up a little higher than I was hoping for. Again, we've made all the patterns on the 15-minute charts here. This was the IHS had a target in the on the SPX had a target in the 69.12 area, made and kept going. Qs, we had an IHS target in the 67.5 area, that was made and kept going. Dia, where we don't have anything on terms of divergence on the hourly chart, a 15-minute chart with weak RSI 14 sell signal, but we had an IHS which broke up with a target in the 486.25 area, and obviously that's a comfortably made target and continued high. I am wondering about if we see some more good news about a retest of the high, but otherwise, if we don't, subject to the bullshit meter and how seriously people take that, then I'd be looking for it to go down from here. All right, let's have a look at the IWM chart. Okay, IWM. On the monthly chart, we do have a new RSI 5 sell signal brewing here after we made a new high. In terms of the daily chart, no current divergence, but again, over 90, we're and pretty much nosebleed levels on all of these RSI 5s on the dailies. In terms of the retest of the high, this would make a pretty nice looking double top. In terms of the hourly chart, no current divergence. Obviously, we had hourly sell signals across the board, and they all failed. On IWM, on the 15-minute, we've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fixed, and I think this was Dyer. It was Dyer that made the target last, but obviously we made target on the double bottom that's broken up here too. So we've made all of those targets, including the one on Nikkei, which I haven't got marked on this chart. DAX haven't reached the high. Could this be a head and shoulders forming? Yeah, not a particularly pretty one, but maybe. Not as good as the one that would be forming potentially on Dyer, except that the right shoulder high and the left shoulder high would be better balanced. In terms of Nikkei, we retested the high here, and we've got a beautiful potential double top here. And very much, if we don't get good news, this could be a double top. We've still got a weekly RSI 14 sell signal fixed, and we've got monthly sell signal fixed on the RSI 5 as well as the RSI 14. The RSI 5 ones, these tend to be a pretty serious indicator. I'm really wondering about this double top. All right, great. Let's have a look at the currencies. So DX, we are seeing a spike today. Obviously, this has tended to go up when things are looking ugly on the war, and it tends to go down when things are looking good. So we are up tonight. In terms of the declining resistance here, it was already broken. I'm wondering whether we've been performing, well, we've got a double top here, which is broken down with a target in the 96.76 to 96.99 range. But I'm wondering if we're actually just forming a bull flag here. We shall see. In terms of the other currencies, USD, seeing a bit of a pullback here, but we've got an IHS target, and I've got that in the 1.1875 area, and actually we've got pretty close to that. On GBP USD, we've got a little level top which is breaking down, suggesting further downside into, let's say, the 134.10 area. USD JPY, this is a potential head and shoulders forming, but if the dollar's going to go up, then this is going to go up. And I've got a very nice retest target I would very much like to see made in the 162 area. Looking at USD, USD CAD, this hasn't seen a big boost tonight, but this looks like a bull flag forming, although if it is a bull flag, it'll need to turn shortly because it's going a little too large. We've got a 6-minute buy signal that's reached the possible near miss target. On Australian dollar, we've seen a little bit of a pullback here, possible double top. NZUSD, little level top here, which is broken down with a target in about the 58.35 area. All right, let's have a look at those on the big picture charts. And on US dollar, we've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fix that's getting into the possible near miss target area. Arguably, it's reached it. No, it has reached it, I think. All right, I'm going to call that. That's reached the possible near miss target. So if we are going to turn back up and not make the double top target, this wouldn't be a bad area. This wouldn't be a bad time to do that. We could, of course, retest the lows here and set up a possible RSI 5 buy signal. In terms of the bigger picture, obviously we've got the flag, and what I'm wondering is whether the flag's got the juice to get back to flag resistance and potentially go back to retest this high at 114.78. And I have to say, I think a continued war in Iran would be a complete disaster for everybody, but except shorts on equities and longs on oil. But that being that aside, this is a nice looking setup. And if we did see a continuation in the Iran war, then that would considerably boost the chances of reaching a retest of this high here at 114.78, although I think it would be very bad for bonds. Okay, looking at USD, again, we've got a nice bear flag mirror to the bull flag on the US dollar, and that's suggesting lower. GBP bear flag suggesting lower. We've got a nice looking not as quite as nice as GBP one. We've got a decent looking double top, which is broken down here on USD and has rallied a lot, but could just continue down. That's a mirror image of the one we're seeing on US dollar. GBP, we've got the same nice looking double top here. We've got a head and shoulders, which broke down, and that's now failed. So sorry, I'm just going to mark that in. So that is suggesting we might see a retest of the high there. Although honestly, we've got so much news in the background here. It is getting increased, and the flood of bullshit from all sides is just so wild here that it's very hard to have a great deal of confidence in what's happening next week at all. So we shall see. USD JPY, this is why I'd like to see the retest of 162 here, because I think that might set up a nice looking double top. Trend line resistance here would be currently at about the 168, 169 area. Not seeing any divergence really, apart from the weak RSI 14 sell signal fixed on the yen. USD CAD, we're in a range here. If we went high, I'd be looking for resistance in the 148 area and a potential double top with the retest there. In terms of the daily chart, nothing to see. Kind of a bit lost in space at the moment. Australian dollar, we've got a potential little level top formed here, and I'm wondering if that might take us back into the back test of this trend line here in about the 65 area. Looking at the daily chart, no current divergence really. NZ, we've broken up from this triangle here, but if the dollar goes up a lot, I'd be leaning towards the NZ going down and testing this this triangle support trend line, which I've got in about the 55.50 area. So we shall see. No divergence there either. So we'll see how that goes, but really this is mainly about what happens in the Iran war. If the Iran war is going badly, dollar is likely to go up. And that's what it's been doing so far. And if the conflict ends, well, it might still go up, but obviously short term the reaction is good news on the Iran war, it goes down. Bad news on the Iran war, it goes up. So let's see next week how bad the news gets. All right, let's have a look at ZB. Now, ZB, we're seeing a bit of a pullback here, and of course that's because we got bad news on the war, because bad news for the war so far has been bad for bonds. Bigger picture, I think we're looking at a potential rally here, and if we can get over the monthly pivot at 114.30, and if the war on the news, if the news is good on the war, mainly though, I think we're probably in part of a larger downtrend. In terms of ZN, this looks an awful lot like a bear flag wedge, suggesting that it's going to break down. And it's not really looking like anything else. We shall see how that goes. All right, let's have a look at that on the bigger picture chart. And TYX, RSI 5 sell signal reached the possible near miss target. We had another one on TNX, and that reached the full target. We had another one on TLT. This was a buy signal, of course, because inversion, and that reached the full target too. So the daily signals I was talking about a few weeks ago have all now made target. Bigger picture, we found support in the monthly middle band, and it looks like we are returning back up to retest the highs. And on the weekly chart, you can see a nice looking triangle with the obvious next target at flag resistance and about the 51.6 area. This would be a potential start of a breakup for an IHS here, and I'm thinking this IHS, regardless of what happens in the Iran war, may well break up later this year. Not because, well, it could, obviously the Iran war could help it, but I'm thinking it may well be breaking up just because of the entirely reckless spending of this administration and the level of the debt becoming a worrying amount. The bond market tends to, or at least it used to in the old days. I mean, there's this lovely quote from, I can't remember who, one of the guys in the Clinton administration, that when he died, he wanted to be resurrected as the bond market because everyone was terrified of the bond market. They haven't been terrified lately, but really, I think it's getting to the stage with the US Treasuries that interest rates going up, trending up, would be something I would expect to see because the bond market needs more risk, more reward for the risk it's taking and continuing to lend money to the US government. In the event there is a crisis, well, we've got an IHS here which has a target in about the 95 area, and I've got another matching one on TNX. and a pretty nice looking inverted head and shoulders here. These could break up, and given the proposals on the 2027 budget from the administration, really, the obvious thing for it to do is to break up. It's so watching that carefully, but we're waiting for the trigger. But as you've seen with the oil patterns that I was looking at last year, then sometimes you just wait and it becomes obvious why it's going to happen. All right, in terms of the hourly chart on TNX, not a lot to see there. Looks like a bull flag forming, which is suggesting the bonds are going to be going up soon. And obviously, we've got a triangle here too, and it's nice. So looking at FVX, not quite as nice the triangle, but it's still a decent triangle. Again, we've got a target up here. Next target would be up in slightly above the 42 area. The target on TNX would be up in about the 46.4 area, I think. So, and TLT, we've got another triangle. Next obvious target on that triangle being, well, if it moves in sync with the others. Actually, on this triangle, I'd be wondering about a move to the resistance next. If it wasn't for the presence of the others. As it is with the others, the obvious move would be to go down to trendline triangle support in about the 82.6 area. So looking at the hourly chart on TNX, not an awful lot. TLT, not a lot to see. But if you're thinking this looks like a possible IHS, you're right. And if you're thinking this looks like a bear flag, you're also right. I think it's likely one or the other. We shall see. Although we can get a combination of the two if the IHS breaks up slightly and then fails back into the lows, which quite often would happen here. Let's have a quick look at, sorry, hang on a second. I'll just draw in that trend line here while I'm looking at it. I'm not that great at coming back and noting things that I move past while I'm doing these webinars, so I'm going to start doing them during them. All right, great. In that case, that's bonds. Let's move on to energies, which obviously the market's confused. Everybody's confused. All right, looking at coil. Obviously, we saw a big decline on Friday, and most of that's been given back already. So we and obviously whoever is close to the administration and is doing his trades 20 minutes before managed to clear 700 million on Friday. So congrats to them. So, but we've obviously given most of that back already. CL, we had a big move down on Friday. That's been mostly given back already. We actually gotten down into the 70s, but we're back up just under 90 now. We will see. We saw big 10% declines on pretty much across the board on here. HO, we're seeing a big move up here too. I'm wondering about this as a flag, although I've also drawn in a possible head and shoulders, which I didn't have a lot of confidence in. But again, as I said, when you've got a flag and a head and shoulders together, if it breaks up, if the head and shoulders fails, then if it goes back to the highs, then they both actually do what they're supposed to do. RBOB, possible head and shoulders here too, didn't break down. It's again given most of the Friday move back. Equities haven't given that back yet, but oil has, because the stretch formula obviously is closed again. And NG, I've been wondering about this possible underthrow with this wedge and a bit of a rally here. We are seeing a bit of a rally here. Now the 60-minute buy signal has reached possible near miss target, but we're forming a potential inverted head and shoulders. Haven't drawn it in yet, but I'm thinking we might see a rally back up to, let's say, the 2.9 area, or possibly even to the monthly pivot at 3.058, although by the time it reached it, it might not be the monthly pivot anymore, of course. Right, let's have a look at those on the bigger picture charts. And, okay, if the war resumes, then it's pretty obvious what I'm expecting to see, and that is a retest of the 2022 high, because this is a pretty decent looking flag, and the flag target would be a retest of the 2022 high at 134.91. If we see the war escalate considerably and last a few weeks more, then actually, the sky is not the limit, but $200 probably wouldn't be the limit. As I said, to go up actually to match the 2008 high in inflation terms would actually be about $225 now. I think that retest might be in range. Looking at the short term, We had some RSI 5 sell signals, which I was a bit doubtful about when they fixed, but they pretty much made target. We've got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed here. These don't really have a track record looking back at this, so but the RSI 5s tend to be pretty reliable. I was doubtful about these, but they did make target. WTIC, we got a flag here, and the target would be a retest of the 2022 high at 126.42, and I'm wondering whether we might go higher. I've got a potential level bottom with targets basically at a retest of the 2022 high and at the retest of we've already made that target on this 126.42 then, but it's also potentially still in play to get us back into the 2008 high retest at 147.27. Wondering about that, and if the war continues, that's very much in play. In terms of the daily chart, we didn't have a sell signal here because we didn't see a higher high between these two highs. In terms of the heating oil chart, we already made the flag target, which was a retest of the 2022 high at 447. We got up to 471, and that was 2022 was an all-time high. That's a new all-time high. We've given back some of that. No divergence on the weekly chart, no divergence on the monthly chart. We did have another daily RSI 5 sell signal. That's made target, and we still got an RSI 14 sell signal, which actually, the track record, I've got 3 signals like that on this chart, and they did all make target. Maybe they'll make target too, but it'll probably require some sort of a resolution in terms of the Iran war and peace in the near future. All right, so that's where we are on heating oil. Let's have a look at gas oil, where we've got a flag with a target at a retest of the 2022 high, which is also the all-time high at 412. That's probably not going to make target if the war doesn't continue. If the war does continue, it's very much on the table. In terms of the, there's no divergence really on the weekly charts or the monthly chart. On the daily chart, when the RSI 14 sell signals reached possible, they missed target, and we've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fixed as well. In terms of natural gas, we went through the trend line I was thinking of. I've got the main resistance I'm seeing as the monthly middle band at 3.43. We went through the trend line that I was looking at, which was this trend line, but it was only a slight move. This could be a bullish underthrow, but I seriously doubt that. I think we've seen a break below. I think we're seeing a bounce, and then we'll probably see it go lower. This doesn't seem to be affected really by what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz or the Middle East at all, but it's kind of overdue for a bounce. It's come down from 565 to 256 in 3 months. That is worth a bounce. And actually, between January and April. So that is worth a bounce, and I'm thinking we might well see a modest bounce here, and that would be a natural thing to see. Do we have any positive divergence? No. We could change that with a retest of the low, which could give us a nice RSI 5 buy signal. Those got a very good track record. All right, great. Let's have a look at precious metals. Okay, GC. GC, we've still got an IHS which is broken up with a target in the 511 area. And we have not been making much progress towards that. I was thinking this 4900, which is what we made when it seemed that peace was a few oil contracts away from one of Trump's friends on Friday, but we've seen a pullback obviously overnight. I'm still liking the upside here, and I really like the upside overall on the metals. I'm thinking that even if the Iran war does continue, it may well start taking its natural role as a flight to safety destination in a way that US treasuries won't, because they're not really a flight to safety anymore. In terms of SI, does this still look like a bit like a bear flag? Yes. Haven't broken down below the rising support though. We are breaking above the monthly pivot significantly, and currently that is acting as support. I'm watching that carefully. Palladium could be a bear flag. Platinum looks like a bear flag. Looks like a pretty decent bear flag, actually. Waiting to see if these do break lower and possibly retest the lows. If war breaks out, then that becomes more likely, as precious metals have been dropping so far. And you can see that this is dropping so far on this news over the weekend about the Iran war appearing to be back on. In terms of HG, nice move up here. I've expanded the chart, and you can now see where I'm thinking it might retest, which is this high here in the 665 area. I'm thinking that could make the nice second high of double top if we get there. Not really seeing much upside beyond, and we are in a resistance area now, but if we see it go higher, that's where I would be looking for. Okay, let's have a look at those on the bigger picture charts. And right, looking at gold, we've got a possible RSI 5 sell signal brewing. We've got quite a few of these here. Not sure how much to read into it, but if the war is back on in a big way, we could get some RSI 5 sell signals across the board. Well, on a lot of these here. On gold, on silver, both GDX and GDXJ. We've got, hang on a second. Daily chart, right? Okay, possible RSI 5 sell signal brewing, possible RSI 5 sell signal brewing. I can't remember whether we've got them on. No, we don't have one on palladium, but I think we do have one on platinum. Yes, we do. So we've got a series of possible sell signals here. I have been talking about the possibility we would come back in and to retest these lows. I really like the bull flags. This one on gold is just a beautiful, beautiful bull flag channel, but we could retest the low or do a sharp retracement. Retest the low, a little big for a double bottom, but still doable. And we've got a potential little level top here. I'm wondering if that might deliver. Silver, I was talking about this last week as well, of course. Here, I'm wondering whether this might be a bear flag, setting up a retest the low, and then setting up a double bottom to go higher. Nice looking flag here, which is broken up. I'm looking at palladium. This looks like a flag which is broken up. Looking at platinum, this looks like a flag which is broken up. Kind of a theme here, but we could still see low retests before they go on and play to the upside, and we start seeing some new highs on precious metals. In terms of copper, not seeing any obvious reason to go up, but markets do love retests. We've brought back a lot of this initial decline, which was mainly on the Iran war, I think. Yeah, first bit of decline wasn't, but I mean, if we see a retest this high, that is not unusual to see, and that could set up potentially a nice looking double top. No divergence here on the daily chart. The RSI 14 sell signal has already reached the possible near miss target. In terms of GDX, as I was saying, we've got possible daily RSI 5 sell signals brewing. We could go lower here, but I'm thinking overall we're likely to have been forming bull flags here on the precious metals, and while we might see a pullback here, I wouldn't be expecting that outlook to change. So I'm expecting to still be in a process which takes us back to new all-time highs, really across the board. Okay, let's have a look at the other commodities. Now, KC, this still looks like a bear flag, and it may be breaking down. SB, I was talking about reaching a retest of the low here. We've almost reached it, but not quite. 6-minute buy signal fixed, and I've drawn in a decent looking trend line here, and I'm watching that for resistance. We shall see how that goes. On CC, this looks an awful lot like a bear flag channel. We made a perfect channel here and reversed. This is looking really nice. Next obvious target, if we can get back below the monthly pivot, would be the trendline support down here in about the 3060, 3070 area, and then after a breakdown from there, a retest of this low. We shall see how that goes. In terms of cotton, we've broken up here. Bigger picture, we've broken up for a double bottom and are moving up fast. Week 6-minute sell signal fixed a while ago and hasn't quite failed, which is all I can say about it, really. Lumber, I'm wondering whether we're in the process of resuming the downtrend. On wheat, I'm wondering whether we're resuming the uptrend. I'm thinking that because of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and with the damage done already, I'm wondering whether enough damage has already been done to make the double bottom targets on wheat and corn. Those double bottoms have not broken up. Cotton is broken up now, but I've got two big double bottoms there, and I've got a possible big IHS forming on soy. So I'm thinking these may all start heading up and making tracks to the upside. And at the moment, there are signs that might be happening, but nothing definite like we've seen on cotton. On soy, I'm thinking we're forming an IHS right shoulder, and that's looking pretty good. Break over the monthly pivot, we might be returning back up to the high. ZL, wondering about a retest of the highs here too. Live cattle, we're seeing a bit of a pullback here, but I'm not seeing anything to suggest really that the uptrend is broken. And lean hogs, I'm a little concerned about the distance down we've been going here. Hang on, let me just pull that out a bit. Let's go with a year daily. Here, you can see we're getting a bit out of ideal territory for flag here. We're dipping slightly below the 61.8, much below the 61.8, and really I stopped thinking about it as being a flag. So it could be, it'll still be possible, but it's not going to look as attractive. We shall see how that goes. So I think was this on 4 months before? Hang on 1 second. Yeah, it was. All right. So at the moment, if this is a flag, I'd be really looking for it to turn back up ASAP. Anything below that, and this might well just extend lower. Okay. In that case, let's have a look at those on the bigger picture charts. Right, coffee. Coffee, we've got a little level top here, which pretty much made target, and we've been seeing a little bit of a bounce here. Really, I'm leaning towards continuation lower and making this first double top target in about the 2.65 area. I think that's probably coming next. No divergence on the daily chart here. I've got a little IHS here, which broke up with a target in the 3.32 area, and we've not quite failed that IHS. It needs to get below 2.816. If it does, then I'll be looking for a retest of this low and likely a bit lower. Looking at sugar, still wondering about the bigger picture. Head and shoulders that's just broken down with target in the 90 area, but shorter term, I'm wondering about a wedge here. It's a pretty nice looking wedge here. We reached wedge resistance. I'm thinking we might go back to wedge support here, but sooner or later, this is suggesting we get a decent bounce. It doesn't mean that we won't make the head and shoulder target afterwards, but I'm looking for a potential bottoming setup to form here on sugar. Looking at the daily chart here, we've now got a possible RSI 5 buy signal growing on sugar, and the RSI 14 sell signal reached the possible near miss target. Right, looking at cocoa. Cocoa, we pretty much, I wasn't really taking these big double top targets seriously, because really, the higher target maybe at 1500, the lower target was just, getting below levels we'd been trading at, 20 years ago when the value of money was considerably higher. So I'm still wondering if we might make this 1450 target. But really, I think we've been forming probably a little bear flag. The RSI 14 buy signal has fixed, hasn't quite reached the possible near miss target. Looks like a bear flag forming. And looks like it on the futures chart too. On cotton, we've got a nice looking double bottom here, which had formed. I was talking about this before it broke up, and it's broken up now with a target in the 88.64 to 89.13 area, and I'm leaning towards it making that target. That would be a less than 38% retracement of this move down from the 2022 high after the start of the Ukraine war, because that's what made all these highs, including the ones on oil. Short term on cotton, looking pretty overbought on both the RSI 14 and the RSI 5. So I'm thinking we're likely to see a bit of a pullback soon. Lumber, this still looks like a bear flag. This still looks like a double top, which is broken down. Both targets would get it back to the retest of this low here at 352.50, and sooner or later, and we've been waiting a while, then I'm expecting it to make that. We've now been forming this bear flag for over 3 years, but it hasn't broken up from it, and we've got decent indications to suggest that one day it will break down. In the short term, we've got a daily RSI 5 buy signal fixed. Looking at wheat, lovely looking double bottom here. We saw a slight break up over it, and then we've seen a pullback. I'm thinking it's ready to go. Certainly one thing I was reading about both wheat and corn was that a lot of the spring wheat wasn't planted because it was hard to get hold of fertilizer and the price was far higher than it was before the Iran war started, because obviously the Strait of Hormuz being blocked. I'm thinking that might have done enough damage to wheat prices already that we might make the target on the strength of it. So I'm really liking this pattern, but it hasn't actually confirmed the breakup with a move over 625 yet. Looking at the daily chart on wheat, we've got an RSI 14 sell signal fix. Not taking that particularly seriously, but it's possible we'll see a bit more downside. But the more downside we see here, the less likely it is that enough damage has already been done. I think the market's smart enough to pick up at least some of that. We shall see. All right, let's have a look at corn. Corn, we've got lovely looking double bottom here too. It's a peach, not broken up yet, but I'm thinking we've got support here at the weekly middle band, and I'm thinking we may be heading up. In terms of the daily chart, we've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fixed here, and we've got a possible trend line target here, but I wouldn't like to see it hit because that would then add weight to this being a rising wedge. I'd rather it went up directly from here. Looking at soybeans, I didn't have a double bottom on here, but it looks like we're forming an IHS now. Not a bad right shoulder, not a bad pattern, and if we see it break up, that would have a target in about the 1560 area. I'm thinking that might deliver. No divergence on the daily chart. All right, great. Let's have a look at crypto. All right, hang on, bear with me. I have got those. Yeah, okay, right. Okay, Bitcoin. Bitcoin, we've been rallying a bit, not a huge amount. Are we still looking at bear flags here? Yes. Are we potentially evolving into larger bear flags here? Yeah, potentially. We haven't hit any obvious trend lines here. I've got one drawn in on this chart, which we haven't quite reached yet, but we are forming a larger flag of some kind, but we've not reached my ideal trend line targets yet, and we might, of course, not. Looking at Solana. Solana, we've seen a bit of a rally too. This has been more muted. I've been thinking we would see more upside here, and I've got a little, inverted head and shoulders here, which is broken up with a target at a retest of 97.66, and I've got that. Has that failed? Oh no, sorry, there were two head and shoulders here. This is actually not an IHS. I think, or it was another one. All right, whatever. This is an IHS which I haven't actually marked up and put a target on for, but the target is, it is that one. Okay, and for some reason I've marked this as failed, and it's not. Hang on, sorry, I just better take that notation off because it's misleading. But okay, this is an odd one because this also broke up in April. All right. I'm going to put that down as, let's say, I don't know, 12th of April. For some reason, I seem to have my notations confused here. But anyway, bottom line is we've got a nice looking IHS. It's broken up. It's not failed. But I'm thinking it might do. We've seen a bit of a pullback off. We got up to 90.78 and we've seen a sharp pullback from there. It would need to get down below, it needs to get down below 78.37 to break down, to fail. So it's nowhere near that and not likely to reach it in the short term. But bigger picture, this is still a bear flag that's broken down. In due course, I'm expecting this to go back and retest the low. The lows I would expect to see retested are on Bitcoin at 60.1k, on Solana it's at 67.65, and on Ethereum I would expect to see a retest of this low here at 1746.93. All of these look like bear flags, although the messiest bear flag is on Ethereum, and I think we might find a decent looking, better looking set of patterns here on Ethereum as and when this uptrend is finished. If it's already finished, then that's not going to happen. And none of these flags will be much improved. We shall see. All right, great. In that case, that is a wrap. In which case, final comments, watching very carefully to see what happens on peace over the next couple of days. And we need to remember that whatever we hear from the Trump administration, which causes big moves, may just be because someone's making bank and may not actually be any reflection of what's happening. I think the Iranians are probably going to hang tough, as I've said before, in the event that the US wants this war to end, which I think would very much be in the best interests of everybody, then I think they're going to have to make some sizable concessions. I thought what we were seeing on Friday was those concessions being made. That seems much less certain now, so we shall see. All right, great. In that case, I think that's a wrap. Everyone take care, and I'll catch you guys again on Wednesday. Cheers.